So Model Millionaire is a short story written by Oscar Wilde, right? Is an Irish author. So somebody should read the introduction part. Sneha, you can start.
Good morning, teachers.
Good morning.
Chapter
Good morning.
11, The Model Millionaire.
Yes.
The Model Millionaire is a short story by the Irish author Oscar Wilde. It first
Yes.
appeared in print in the newspaper The World in June 1887. It was published again in 1891 as part of the anthology Lord Arthur
Civil. Yes.
Seville's Crime and Other Stories. The story concerns a young man who, although not having much money himself, is moved to pity by the sight of an elderly beggar who is posing as a model for his artist friend, although he can barely afford to do so. The young man gives the beggar the largest denomination coin that
Coin.
he
Yes.
has in his pocket. The young man's act of kindness has unexpected positive consequence for him.
Yes. All right.
Thank you, sir.
So basically, what is there in this story is that it is about a young man, right? Who although does not have much money himself. So this man is not having a lot of money for himself, right? But he is moved to pity, means that he is empathizing with the elderly beggar that is present over there as a model for his artist friend. So basically, this man is having an artist friend, right? A friend who is an artist, and there was a model present. Model means someone who is posing as a model for the artist so that the artist could make a painting. So he must have been visiting his friend who is the artist, and at that time, the artist was making a portrait where a man was standing who was a beggar as a model, right? So seeing that he is such an elderly man and he is so poor, he is a beggar, then this young man who himself was not having any money, but he was so moved, he felt so much pity for the beggar that he gave a large coin. The largest denomination means.
Please repeat for them. Yeah.
So what happened in this story is that it concerns a young man who although does not have much money himself. So he was not a rich man, he did not have enough money for himself, but when he went to his artist friend, and at that time his artist friend was making a painting of an elderly beggar. So when this young man saw the elderly beggar, he felt so much pity. He was so moved by looking at that elderly beggar that he decided to give him something. So he gave the largest denomination, means the largest currency coin that was there in that country. For example, over here we have the largest denomination coin that is in circulation is 10 rupees basically, right? So over there also there must have been one coin with the largest denomination that he had in his pocket. He gave it to that old beggar. And the young man, although he himself did not have enough money. So this act of kindness of the young man had some unexpected positive consequences for him. So now we will see and find out in the story that what really happened after the young man showed this act of kindness. Because if someone himself is not having enough money, if that person also starts giving so much money in donation, doing charity, then that person appears to be a very kind person. And then something positive happens for him. So let's find out. Yes, Shubhangi, you can start reading the text.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
There is no use in being charming unless one is wealthy. Romance is the privilege of the rich, not the profession of the unemployed. It is better to have a permanent income than to be fascinating. The poor should be practical and prosaic. These are the great truths of modern life which Hughie Erskine never realized. Poor Hughie. Intellectually, we must admit he was not of much importance, but then he was wonderfully good looking with his crisp brown hair, his clear cut profile, and his grey eyes. He was as popular with men as he was with women, and he had very accomplishment except that of making money. He had tried his hand at many professions and failed at all. Ultimately, he became a delightful, ineffectual young man with no profession, living on 200 a year that an old aunt allowed him.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So now the story opens with there is no use in being charming unless one is wealthy. So now it is being said that in life, if you are not wealthy, if you do not have sufficient money, then it is absolutely useless. So, if you are not rich enough, then everything is worthless. All right. Romance is the privilege of the rich, not the profession of the unemployed. So, the author is saying that romance is just for the rich people. The poor people, they don't have anything to do with it because they have their own problems in life. They are involved in their own problems and they cannot afford to do these things. And another important thing is that because they are poor, they are not rich, so they have to see that the person with whom they are falling in love with should also be of the same social status, should be of the same financial status. So a lot of things have to be considered, right? So for the poor it is very tough to be in love or to be loved, but for the rich it is a privilege. So romance is the privilege of the rich, but not the profession of the unemployed. It is better to have a permanent income than to be fascinating. So the author is saying that it is better for a person to be earning something at all times, right? To have a permanent income than to be very good looking. Fascinating means to be very captivating, very interesting. Some people have a very interesting personality. They look very good, they talk in a good way, they are very charming in nature, right? So that is a fascinating or captivating personality. So the author is saying that it is much better, much more practical in life that you should have a continuous income, a permanent income that you should earn instead of being fascinating. The poor should be practical and prosaic. Prosaic means the poor should be very ordinary in nature. Because even if you are very fascinating, even if you are very captivating, then also if you are poor, then no rich person is going to like you. Basically, this is what the poet is indirectly hinting at, that you won't be successful with the rich people, with the privileged class, if you are poor. So instead, you should be ordinary and you should be practical in life. You should approach life with a lot of practicality. You should not aim very high. This is what the author is saying. These are the great truths of modern life which Hughie Erskine never realized. So these are the great truths of modern life. This is what the poet is saying, that we should have a permanent income instead of looking fascinating, and the poor should always be practical in life, very wise in life, and should be ordinary, because even if you are good looking, then also nobody is going to like you. Nobody is going to accept you as their part, as a part of theirs, as a part of their society, as a part of their family, if you are not rich enough. Then, poor Hughie. Intellectually, we must admit that he was not of much importance. So it means that his mind was not that sharp. He was intellectually not of much importance, but then he was wonderfully good looking. So he had a very charming, very fascinating personality. He was good looking. With now his description is given with crisp brown hair, clear clear cut profile means a very good personality, a very good body frame he had, and his gray eyes. So he looked very good. He was popular with men as he was with women. So the men as well as women both liked him a lot because of his charming personality. But then and had every accomplishment. Accomplishment means to have success, to have something done in life, right? So he had done everything in life. He was liked by everyone except that of making money. So this was his only problem, that he was not able to make any money. And the poet is saying that that is the most important thing in life, that a person should always have a permanent source of income. Even if he is not good looking, he should have a permanent source of income. And that was his problem, that he was good looking, everybody liked him, but he was not having any money because intellectually he was not that good at all. So he could not work properly, maybe. He had tried his hand at many professions. Professions means different types of jobs he had done in his life and failed at all. So he was not successful in doing any job properly. So he had tried different jobs, but maybe he must have been fired from all the places. He was not allowed to do any of the jobs and he failed at them. Ultimately, he became a delightful, ineffectual young man. So ineffectual means someone who is unsuccessful, right? Someone who is very incompetent in nature, right? So he was delightful because he was very good looking. He had charming personality. Everybody loved to talk with him, right? So he had a very good nature. So he was a delightful young man, but at the same time, he was also ineffectual, which means he was unsuccessful in life because he was not able to earn money. With no profession, living on 200 a year that an old aunt allowed him. That an old aunt allowed him means that his aunt used to give him 200 a year and he had to survive on it because he on himself was not able to earn any money, right? Okay. Now we will go to the second paragraph. Ira, yes, start.
Yes, sir. To matters worse, he was in love with Laura Merton, the daughter of a retired colonel. Laura adored him, and he was ready to kiss her shoestrings. They were the handsomest couple in London, and had not a penny piece between them. The colonel was very fond of Hughie, but would not hear of an engagement. Come to me, my boy, when you have got 10,000 of pounds on your own, and we will see about it, he would say, and Yugi had to turn to Laura for consolation.
Okay. So stop, Ira. From yes.
Yes, sir.
To make the matters worse, he was in love with Laura Merton. Now, why is the author saying to make the matters worse? Because in the beginning only the author has pointed out that romance is the privilege of the rich and not the profession of the unemployed and poor, right? So now we know that already that this Hughie, he was not earning anything. So now if he is in love with someone, then how is he going to marry, right? So it was a very tough situation for him because he was in love with Laura Merton, the daughter of a retired colonel, right? So she must have been rich because her father was a colonel. Laura adored him. So Laura actually loved him and he was ready to kiss her shoestrings. So it basically means the intensity with which he loved her. This line has been used to show the intensity that he loved Laura a lot, right? They were the most handsome couple, right? The handsomest couple in London and had not a penny piece between them. But both of them were not earning, right? But for girls, it is not such a matter that the girls do not earn. And in the earlier times, it was not at all a problem. So both of them were not earning. The colonel was very fond of Hughie, but would not hear of an engagement. So again, it is being said that although Colonel was fond of Hughie, he liked his personality, that he is a good, charming boy, but at the same time, he was not ready to do the engagement of his daughter with him. And the reason is simple, that he was not earned, right? So he's saying, come to me, my boy, when you have got 10,000 pounds of your own. So Colonel is saying that when you are able to earn 10,000 pounds on your own, then you can come to me and we will see about it. See about what? Then I will let you marry my daughter. So this is the condition the Colonel put on this young Hughie, right? And Hughie had to turn to Laura for consolation. So naturally, when the colonel told him this, so he became very discomforted, disheartened, right? So he had to go to Laura to tell that this is what your father had said, to find some sympathy and comfort. All right, now let's see what happens after this. Yes, Akash?
Yes, sir. One morning, Yugi dropped in to see a great friend of his, Alan Trevor, an artist. Personally, he was a strange, rough fellow with a freckled face and a red, ragged beard. However, when he took up the brush, he was a real master, and his pictures were eagerly sought
Eagerly.
after. Eagerly sought after.
Yes.
He had been very much attracted by Yugi at first, entirely on account of his personal charm. But after he got to know Yugi better, he liked him quite a much for his buoyant
Buoyant.
spirits,
Buoyant spirit. Yes.
buoyant spirits, and his generous, reckless nature, and had given him the permanent entry to his studio.
Okay.
Wh-
So
Okay,
now
sir. Thank you,
see,
sir.
one morning Hughie dropped in to see a great friend. So he had a very good friend. Hughie had a good friend, Alan Trevor, who was an artist. All right. Personally, he was a strange, rough fellow with a freckled face. Freckled means face means a face which has a lot of spots. So a lot of spots were present on his face, and a red ragged beard. Ragged means something which is not properly groomed, properly trimmed. Okay, so he had a red, free flowing beard. He was not grooming and trimming his beard. However, when we, so basically the look of the painter is very, you can say, not of a very trimmed or a groomed way, because face is also very freckled, the beard is also ragged, he looked also very rough, right? So he was not into personal grooming at all, this painter. But when he took up the brush, he was a real master. So he was a very good painter, he was very good at his work. So now you can see the contrast that is being drawn over here. Hughie was very handsome, very cheerful, good hair, good eyes, right? Everything. He was good looking, but he was not expert as his work. He failed in doing everything. But what his painter friend is doing, he is not in good looks at all. His beard is ragged, his face is freckled, he's looking very rough. But when he starts doing his work, he is an expert at it. So these two friends are exact copies, exact opposites, and replicas of each other, right? Opposites basically. And Atufa is sleeping. So you can see that these are two opposites. The looks is also opposite, and how they were approaching their professional life, this is also opposite to one another. Then, and his pictures were eagerly sought after. So whatever he drew, everybody was after it, that everybody was trying to buy his paintings. So he was very popular among the people. He had been very much attracted by Hughie at first entirely on his personal charm. So just like Hughie was popular among all the men and women, in the same way, this painter also became fond of Hughie because he was very charming in personality, right? But after he got to know Hughie better, so as a person, when he started to know Hughie, because when you become a friend, then you start knowing a person on a very personal level. Then he became fond of him because of the buoyant spirit of Hughie. Buoyant, what is buoyant? It means cheerful and very optimistic person. So Hughie was a very cheerful and a very optimistic, positive person. So he was very fond, this Alan Trevor, who was the painter, he was fond of Hughie because of this reason also. Not only because he was very good looking and charming, but because he was very enthusiastic and a very positive person. And his generous, reckless nature. Generous means someone who is very courteous, who feels pity for everyone, who empathizes, who has sympathy for everyone, right? So he had a good heart also, this Yugi. So he was reckless means he was very impulsive in nature. He was so whenever he saw someone and someone was in trouble, he would just immediately, impulsively help that person. He would not think twice for that. That is why he gave the beggar money even after he was not having enough money himself. So he was very generous in nature and very impulsive, and had given him permanent entry to his studio. So because this painter was so fond of Yugi, that he had given him permanent entry to his studio. So whenever this Yugi wanted, he could come at any time to visit the painter. He was allowed at all times. Yes, Atufa. Atufa, mute. There is noise in the background. Yes, Jinia, you can start.
Good morning, teachers.
Good morning.
When Yugi came in, he found Trevor putting the finishing touches to a wonderful life-size picture of a beggar man. The beggar himself was standing on a raised platform in a corner of the studio. He was a wizened old man with a face like wrinkled parchment corner, which bore a most piteous expression. Over his shoulders was slung a coarse brown cloak, all tears and tatters. His thick boots were patched and
Cobbled means
cobbled,
a cobbler has attended to those boots. All right, right.
cobbled. With one hand he leaned on a rough stick, while with the other he held out his battered hat for arms.
Amps, yes. So now when Yugi came into the studio, he found Trevor putting the finishing touches. So painting was about to be completed to a wonderful life-size picture of a beggarman. So the painting was a huge one. It was the actual life-size picture of a beggarman. Now the description of the beggar is there. The beggar himself was standing on a raised platform in the corner of the studio. He was a wizened old man. Wizened means wrinkled due to age. So since he was an old man, so there were a lot of wrinkles present everywhere on his skin, with a face like wrinkled parchment. Parchment, do you know what is the meaning of parchment? Parchment is a very stiff material that is made from sheep or goat skin. So it looks very rough in nature. So over here also you can find that when one looked at the face of that old beggar, his face also looked very parched, very rough in nature, right? Which bore a most piteous expression. Piteous means very miserable. So the old man looked very old, very wrinkled, and in a very miserable condition. Over his shoulders was flung a coarse brown coat. Coarse again means a very rough brown coat. It means that the fabric of the coat was not very good. It was a very rough brown cloak, all tears and tatters. It means that it was very torn in a very bad state. His thick boots were patched and cobbled. So his coat was also in a very bad state, and the same was the case with his boots. The boots were also patched. Patched means to, you can see, sew it with something. All right. So the boot must have been torn at some place, and some other leather must have been used to sew it. Right. So his boots were also having patches at different places, and cobbled means the cobbler must have given those patches. So the coat was also old and ragged. The same was the case of his boots. His face was very wrinkled, right? So he was in a very poor state. With one hand, he leant on a rough stick. So with one hand, he was holding a rough stick, which helped him to understand, right? Which supported him to stand, while the other he used for his hat. He was holding a battered hat. Battered means a very damaged hat. Again, so everything, whether it is the cloak or it is the boot or whether it is the hat, everything is battered, tattered, damaged, right? His face is wrinkled. So he is indeed a very old man. So he is holding a hat in one hand for the arms, so that if anyone gives him some charity, so he can collect it in his battered hat. So this is the description of the beggar who was there in the studio of his friend Alan Trevor. Okay. Yes, Pranjal, you can continue from here.
What an amazing good morning, teachers.
Good morning. Good
What,
afternoon, actually. Yes.
what an amazing model, whispered Yugi. An amazing model, shouted Trevor. I should think so. Such beggars as he are not to be met with every day. I should thank my lucky stars. What an etching
Rembrandt.
Rembrandt would have made of him.
Okay.
Poor old chap, said Yugi. How miserable he looks. But I suppose to you painters, his face is his fortune. Certainly, replied Trevor. You don't want a beggar to look happy, do you? How much does a model get for sitting? Asked Hughie. A shilling an hour. And how much do you get for your pictures, Alan? Oh, for this I get 2,000 pounds, guineas,
So question, it is a question. Pounds.
pounds, guineas.
Yes.
Painter, painters, poets, and physicians always gets guineas.
Okay. Stop, Pranjal there. So now Hughie is whispering, what an amazing model, right? So basically, because he was trying to paint a beggar, so this beggar was actually the, you can say, the perfect form of beggar that you could find, right? Because everything was torn, everything was tattered. So he was the perfect form, the perfect model you can find for being a beggar. An amazing model, shouted Trevor. I should think so. So the painter is saying that yes, I also think that he's an amazing model. Such beggars as he are not to be met with every day. So he's saying that he is the perfect beggar. We can't find such beggars every day. So for making this painting, he is the ideal one, right? Because he is in a very bad state. I should thank my luck stars. So he's saying that I feel very lucky that I got such an extremely poor and old person as a beggar, so that I can make a good painting, because the painting could be as good as the model, right? So because I have found such a good model for my painting, so my painting will be very good. So he's thanking his luck. What an etching Rembrandt would have made of him. So Rembrandt was a very famous painter. So he's saying that if I am blessed with such a good model and I am making such a good painting, then what this famous painter Rembrandt would have made of him. He is saying that because Rembrandt was a very good painter. Poor old chap, said Hughie. So now Hughie, because you know his nature is very, you can say he's a very generous person, very good at heart. So now he's feeling pity for the old beggar. He's saying, poor old chap, how miserable he looks. But I suppose to you painters, his face is a fortune. So he's saying that, see how miserable he is looking, but for you, you are only thinking about money. That I have found the perfect beggar for as a model to make the painting. So now, with the help of his poor state, I am going to make a lot of money. So to you, his poor state is a fortune, but actually he is leading such a miserable life. This is what Hughie is pointing out. Certainly, replied Trevor. You don't want a beggar to look happy, do you? So basically, when the Trevor said, certainly it is a fortune for me that I have found such a good model for my beggar sketch. So I am going to make a fortune, and I suppose that he should be this way. So this Yogi is saying that you don't want a beggar to look happy, do you? How much does a model get for sitting? Now Hugi is asking that how much do you give a model for sitting? A shilling an hour. So now this Alan Trevor, who is the painter, he's telling that I give the model a shilling an hour. So basically, for standing for 1 hour in that pose, the beggar is only going to get 1 shilling. Okay. And 1 shilling is 1/20th part of a pound. Okay. So pound is the currency of England. So he was getting 1/20th part of a pound for standing for 1 hour. And how much do you get for your picture, Alan? So now he is asking, how much will you get after making this picture? Oh, for this, I get 2000. So now Alan is saying that I will get 2000 for this picture. So now this Hugi is shocked that pounds, you are getting 2000 pounds for this painting and you are just giving a shilling to this beggar for standing for an hour for you. So he is saying guineas. Okay, so 1 guinea is equal to 21 shillings. So he's saying painters, poets, and physicians always get guineas. So he's saying that all people who are in these types of professions like painters, poets, their salaries or money is paid to them in guineas. Well, I think the model should have a percentage, cried Hughie. So Hughie is saying that this is not fair. You are getting so much money by making him stand as a model and drawing a painting. You are getting so much, and this man is only getting a shilling for standing an hour. So he should get a percentage. It means that in whatever amount you sell the painting, then you give a certain percentage of that amount to this beggar. So, for example, if you are giving him 10%, so if you are selling the painting for 2000 guineas, then you should at least give him 200 guineas. So, this is what Hughie is saying because he is very generous, very considerate. So, he's saying that a certain percentage should be given to him. Cried Hughie. They work quite as hard as you do. So Hughie is saying that they are also working very hard like you do. He is also standing there. He is an old man. He is standing there for you for such a long time. So this is also a very hard work like you are painting. So he must also get something for it. Okay. Yes, Arush. Not audible. Rishik.
Well, I think the model should have a percentage.
Start with from
Well,
nonsense. I have explained that line already.
okay, sir. Nonsense, nonsense. Why look at the trouble of laying on the paint alone and standing all day long at one's ease?
Yes.
I assure you that there are moments when art almost attains to the dignity of a manual labor. But you mustn't chatter. I am very busy. After some time, a servant came in and told Trevor that the frame maker wanted to speak to him. Don't run away, Hughie, he said as he went out. I'll be back in a moment.
Okay.
The
So, okay, all right. So now this Alan Trevor, the painter, is saying that it is nonsense. I'm not going to give him any percentage. So he's saying, why look at the trouble of laying on the paint alone and standing all day long at one's ease? So he is saying that art is also very tough. You are not seeing that I am laying the paint alone. He is just standing at ease all day long. Then he is saying, I assure you that there are moments when art almost attains to the dignity of manual labor. So he's saying that art is also a very hard work. Just like manual labor is very hard, for making a piece of art also, it also attains, it also is sometimes as difficult as manual labor, because sometimes we have to work quite a lot making, finalizing a painting. But you mustn't chatter, I am very busy. So he's saying, now don't talk, I am very busy, because he is giving the final finishing touches to his painting. So he's saying that now you keep quiet, I am painting, don't disturb me. My work is also as hard, as tough as the job this beggar is doing. It is also as tough as manual labor. And what this labor is doing, this model, he is just standing all day long at one's ease, right? After some time, a servant came in and told Trevor that the frame maker wanted to speak to him. So basically, he was going to frame the painting afterwards, right? So he was going to have a chat with the person who was going to frame that painting. He's saying, don't run away, Hughie. He said, as he went out, I will be back. So he's saying that stay here, don't go anywhere. I am coming back in a. All right. Yes, Angel, you can start from me.
Yes. The old beggar man took advantage of Trevor's absence to rest for a moment on a wooden bench. He looked so
Forlorn and wretched.
forlorn and wretched that Hughie could not help pitying him and felt in his pockets to see what money he had. All he
Yes.
could find was a sovereign and some coppers. Poor old fellow, he thought to himself. He wants it more that I do, but it means no handsome for a fortnight. He walked across the studio and slipped the sovereign into the beggar's hand.
Okay. So what happened over here is that once this Alan went out, the painter, so this old beggar got some time because of it, because he was standing as a model. Now, since the painter was not there, so he decided that now I can take some rest. So the old beggar took advantage of Trevor's absence to rest for a moment on a wooden bench. So he sat on a wooden bench. He looked so forlorn, means unhappy, and wretched means miserable. So he was looking very unhappy, very miserable, that Hughie started to pity him a lot, and he started feeling his pockets that if he had any money, he could give to this poor beggar. All he could find was a sovereign. Sovereign is equivalent to a pound. So you are finding a lot of these things. Guinea is something which is more than a pound. Sovereign is something that is equivalent to a pound, and then shilling, is something which is less than a pound. So he gave a pound and some. He found a sovereign and some copper coins in his pocket. Copper coins are coins which are of a low denomination. They are much less than a pound. Poor old fellow, he thought to himself, he wants it more than I do. So he is saying that though I am also in need of money, but this man is so poor that he needs it more than I need this money. So he is now giving that sovereign or a pound to this old man. And he is saying to himself, no hansoms for a fortnight. Hansoms means the horse cart. So there must have been horse carts in England, right? That were used for traveling. So he's saying that now for a fortnight, that is a period of 15 days, he will not be able to travel in a cart. So he will have to walk everywhere. But then also he is giving this money to the old man. So you can see how generous Yugi was, that he was not having enough money and now he will have to travel on foot for 15 days because of the sovereign that he is giving. But still he is giving that money. He walked across the studio and slipped the sovereign into the beggar's hand. So he gave the money to the beggar. The old man startled, and faint smile flitted across his withered lips. So now when Hughie came and gave him the money, the old man was very surprised that this man is giving me the money. And a faint smile means little smile came across his withered lips. Withered again means cracked, having a lot of withers, right? Thank you, sir, he said. Thank you. So he is saying thank you again, again, again to him. Then Trevor arrived and Hughie took his leave, blushing a little at what he had done. So he was still smiling, feeling that he has done such a good thing. He was still smiling and he took Trevor's leave. He spent the day with Laura, got a charming scolding for his extravagance, and had to walk home. So now, naturally, when he went to Laura and told that I have given a sovereign to the old man, so naturally, Laura would have scolded him that you yourself don't have any money and you are going away giving money to people. So now you will have to keep on walking alone. So this scolding has been called charming because it was given to him by his girlfriend, right? So this is charming scolding for him. Otherwise, it would have been a very bad scolding, right? If it was given by a teacher or anyone. So it was a charming scolding for him for his extravagance. Extravagance means when a person is spending a lot of money, right? Which is not required, which is injuring that person only. And actually this money that he spent, it injured him in a way, because now he won't be able to take the horse cart and everywhere he will have to go on foot, right? So this spending was money was indeed, you can see, injurious to him in a way. So this is called extravagance. So naturally Laura scolded him for it, that don't become so extravagant, don't spend your money like this, try to save your money, try to preserve your money. And you also remember that her father has already put up a condition that Hughie has to earn 10,000 pounds, only then they can marry. So if he will keep on spending money like this only, then how are they going to get married? That is also one problem, right? So because of that, he got a good scolding from Laura. We are going to stop over here. From the next class, we are going to proceed further.